Hi, my name is Byron, and I'm the pastor of Atmosphere of Praise Ministries in Dallas, Texas. The premise of this show is very simple. For my whole life, I've wanted to create gospel music and have that be a blessing and an inspiration to those that hear it. After 30 plus years, despite the distractions and challenges and left turns my life has taken, at 46 years old, I'm going after my dream, and I want to share my journey with you. Where to start? Well, I don't know. I remember growing up in Rochester, New York. From what I remember, it wasn't an overall unpleasant experience. It was a pretty friendly city for the most part. Um, it was the home to companies like Kodak and Xerox and Bausch and Lomb. And remember 72 Inglewood Drive and being a little boy and living in that house. I remember the house caught on fire Christmas Eve, and we all had to rush to get out of the house to be safe. For as long as I can remember, music has been a part of my life. I remember in the early days living there at 72 Inglewood Drive that I remember one of my mother's good friends gave us one of those electric wind organs, you know, the ones with the little the little black and white buttons on the side where you play the chords, and you can play your notes on this side. One of those ancient little wind organs, and they put it in me and my brother's bedroom, and I just loved it. I mean, I took to it immediately and just began to mess around and create music, and at least it was music to me. But apparently, it had become kind of a noise nuisance in the house, so the organ was eventually moved up to the attic. But I'd still make my way up to the attic, and it wasn't long before they were calling me the Phantom of the Opera because of the organ music that would emanate from the eaves of the house. I started school at John Spencer Elementary School, school number 16 in the 19th Ward, and still having a passion, you know, for music. I sought out the school music teacher and began to, play in the classroom, and she recognized that I had a talent, and I asked her if she would teach me how to play, and she told me that if I wanted her to teach me, that I was going to have to get up and I was going to have to come to school early. I was going to have to be to school at least a half an hour early so that I could have my lesson with her. And I was so excited that I did it. I'd get up and I'd go into her classroom early for school, and she would give me a lesson. Her name was Mrs. Shisholi, and I still remember her name to this day. My heart was broken when Mrs. Shisholi became Mrs. Pratt, and shortly after she got married, she stopped teaching at the school, and thus, concluded my very first music lessons. And then I remember that my family, we moved to a better neighborhood, which was out there in Pittsford, New York, and we're on Woodland Road. And then after my third grade year, I remember being transferred into the Pittsford school system, and I went to a school called Allens Creek Elementary School. And I remember the large pillars in the front of the school, and when my dad was taking me up there to register, I remember seeing the school and saying, wow, I'm going to college already. And so I'm going to Allens Creek Elementary School, and that was presenting some challenges. It was an adjustment, making new friends. And I would say that in hindsight, it was probably the first time that I had ever experienced any kind of racism. Allens Creek was a predominantly white school. But at dismissal time, we were all gathering our things to go out and catch our various, school buses to get home, and the teacher made the wrong assumption that I was taking way too long to get ready because I needed to make sure that I got on the city bus with the city kids going back to the city. So evidently, that was, being a city kid was the code for the black kids. Because if you were black and you were attending a Pittsford school, you were obviously being bussed in from the city because you were in a family that couldn't afford to live in Pittsford. We were living in Pittsford, and I was a resident. And so when I told her that that's not the bus that I catch, my bus is over here, she just kind of seemed a little flabbergasted. So at any rate, I had some trials going through Pittsford schools. My parents at that time had enrolled me in Hawkstein School of Music, and but by then my disdain for academics had pretty much kicked in. Well, it was the 80s. I mean, there was so much going on musically, and so much for a young gay black man to take in and be creative and aspire to. Mad money was being made. There was a lot of liberty in the air. It was an energizing time. It was exciting, to kind of grow up in the 80s. But, at the same time, I still felt like something was missing, and I could never really quite lay my hands on, the direction that I wanted my life to go in. Well, of course I did. I knew at a very young age that I was attracted to males. While I didn't really have a word for it, I knew what I wanted. I mean, I was 4 years old, and my imaginary friend was a fireman named Steve that came and got into bed with me and cuddled with me. It wasn't anything sexual at that point, but I knew what I wanted to be next to. I knew what brought me comfort. I knew what I desired, and so I didn't have any sense that there was anything wrong with that until much later. There was a time when our family became much more intentionally connected to the church and to Christianity. My mom, got saved. I think it was her brother that led her to the Lord. And shortly after that, my brother and my sister got saved. And of course, me being the youngest, I was kind of being dragged, to church too. Didn't have any way of getting out of it. And then shortly after that, my father was saved as well. But somewhere in there, I'm not sure of the chronology of it, but my uncle, my mother's brother, kind of had me sequestered down in the basement of the house at Woodland Road, and he began to share with me the plan of salvation. And there I was at 11 years old, and he was asking me, did I want to accept Christ? And so I was like, well, hey, yeah, I didn't know any difference. I knew that this was what my mom and my family members were doing, and we were going to church, and so I just felt like it was the right thing to do. I said the sinner's prayer at 11 years old, and yes, I believe Jesus honored that 11-year-old boy's prayer. But then I really did truly try to seek out, what it meant to be in a relationship with Jesus Christ. And for all intents and purposes, I felt like I was failing at it. I wasn't doing well in school. My friendships were not really panning out. The one guy that I was really wanting to spend time with or moved away, and then I felt all alone and rejected, and I felt like all these bad things were happening to me, and I couldn't figure out why. We were attending church at Faith Temple regularly now. I had flunked out of the 7th grade and couldn't really figure out what was going on with my life and didn't know what was going to happen next. But all I know is that next year I had been enrolled at Faith Temple School. The church where we went had a Christian school that was that they were operating. It was a pretty new and strange academic environment, but I was grateful, as I don't think I would have been able to bear repeating the grade at the same school. Faith Temple was a lively church. Had kind of an active youth group. And one of the things that I remember about Faith Temple, though, was when I saw how people really enjoyed worshiping God. That was the first time I ever saw the Reverend Gary Leanhouse as a minister of music at Faith Temple. He would get on the piano and lead people in worship, and that was the first time that I had felt something rise up on the inside of me and say, that's what I want to do. This is it. I wanted to be able to play, and I wanted to be able to sing, and I wanted to make God happy. And that was the day that it resonated in me. And it was during worship. And I knew then, I knew what God wanted from my life. I knew why God had given me this gift of music. And even though it wasn't fully developed yet to do, that's what I believe God wants me to do. And as soon as I acknowledged that, that's when everything hit the fan. That's when I believe the devil began to put plans into action to systematically destroy my life. And he was going to use the church to do it. So this is my big day, my first day going to the studio. All right, today's my big day, my first day in the studio. I'm ready for it. Okay, so I'm on my way to the studio with my boy Riley, and we are trying to find our way to a gas station so we can make sure we got gas. And I'm just so excited about this whole process. I've been wanting to do this since I was 14 years old, so I got about 31 years to live. I'm ready to do this thing.